Welcome into this Friday Fun Day edition of Big Ten Today. So glad to have you here. He's former Illinois guard Trent Meacham. I'm Kylan Mills. The second weekend of the NCAA tournament is officially here, and one Big Ten team has already punched their ticket to the Elite Eight. Illinois taking down Iowa State last night. And Trent, first I want to know, did you stay up and did you celebrate it all after your Illini got the big win?
Of course I stayed up. I did not celebrate. I got some sleep so I could get up here this morning. But a big win for this Illini program. It's been well documented. 19 years since they got to a Sweet 16. Now make another step to the Elite Eight, knocking on the door of a Final Four. It's big for this program.
It's big for the program, and they did it in exciting fashion, nail-biting fashion even, maybe to the dismay of some Illini fans. Game-high 29 points, his seventh consecutive 20-point game. He made 4 3-pointers, was off the floor for a 6-minute stretch in the second half, which definitely played a factor in that Iowa State starting to close the gap, but still Terrence Shannon Jr. has been outstanding in the postseason. Any initial thoughts, first of all, on his performance?
Well, yeah, TSJ once again was a National Player of the Year good in postseason play. 3 games in the Big Ten tournament, 3 games in the NCAA tournament, over 31 points a game. He's getting to the free throw line over 11 times per game. So the pressure he's putting on the rim, he's knocking down the three, was really good. I thought initially how Iowa State, I look at how they guarded Marcus Damask, and they brought a lot of heat to him. They forced him baseline, they trapped him. What that did is it opened up the weak side, and who's over there on the weak side is Terrence Shannon. So you have an All-American who's now able to play off closeouts, got a couple threes to go early. Illinois got off to a lead, looking really good. And then to close it out, I'd say, too, for TSJ, made some key drives to the bucket, finishing through contact, had a big steal as well. So he did so many things once again, played like an All-American, made all the plays, got them going early, and made the plays late to get the win for the Illini.
Another big thing for this Illini offense was taking care of the basketball. It's something that's plagued them in some of their losses this season. For example, going back to the Penn State game where they crumbled at the end, they struggled with forced turnovers with the way that Penn State trapped the ball. It seemed like there was a big improvement in terms of the decision-making and composure from the Illini in this game against the best defense in the country. It needs to be pointed out, and Iowa State averages forcing about 18 turnovers per game. Illinois turned it over 12 times in this one, and they had a really good stretch there in the first half where they were really taking care of the basketball. What did you see from the Illini in their decision-making in this match?
Well, yeah, Iowa State, their physicality, their aggressiveness was so impressive defensively, but I thought the spacing for Illinois was really good. And yes, Iowa State had 11 steals, but Illinois did a pretty good job of keeping them out of getting buckets off those steals. And conversely, Illinois had 3 steals, Terrence Shannon with 2 of them, Coleman Hawkins with another one, that they converted for breakaway dunks. But for the most part, when Illinois got trapped, typically is Marcus Damask. He had a lot of attention. It could be on the wing. It could be as high as half court off ball screens. He did a great job of keeping his pivot foot, staying composed, battling through it, finding maybe it's Coleman Hawkins, someone at the top of the key. And Damask had 5 assists, but he probably had 5 or 6 more hockey assists where he made that pass that then led to the assist. So really, though, despite Damask only having 7 points, not shooting the ball well, still the offense flowed through him. He made a lot of great plays that allowed guys like Terrence Shannon, guys like Luke Goody hit a couple big threes, Coleman Hawkins hit some big threes, but it's still in the half court. It started with Damask, made good decisions for the most part against a great defense.
So can we start the push right now to make the hockey assists a thing and start tallying those in basketball? Because Marcus Damask would have had several, as you pointed out. He was just doing such a good job facilitating.
Yeah, he was great. You know, so much of their offense in the half court, really Damask is the guy. Shannon is in the open court. Shannon is in isolation basketball, which he did his damage, but Damask only 7 points again, but 6 rebounds, 5 assists, made a lot of key plays. And I also look at that stretch in the second half. So Kylan, Illinois got off to a big lead, 11-2 the first couple minutes into the game. Iowa State really battled back quickly in the second half. It cut it to 4, then cut it to 2 multiple times. I thought a critical play. We haven't talked much about Illinois' defense, but they were pretty stout throughout.
Yep.
Held Iowa State to under 40% field goals. But Iowa State was down by 2, driving to the basket. Illinois, I think it was Dane Danger, blocks the lob threat. Then they kick it out, Damask and 1 in transition. The following possession, Terrence Shannon was on the bench for a number of minutes with 4 fouls. He comes in, I think the first time he touched the ball, hits a 3. Then Coleman Hawkins hits a 3. And despite Iowa State continuing to score, those 3 3-point plays in a row really gave Illinois the cushion to come away with that win.
To your point about key defensive plays, too, that steal by Terrence Shannon Jr. with about 30 seconds left is able to convert on the other end. That was a huge momentum shift as Iowa State was really closing the gap there in the final minute, and him being able to get out in those passing lanes is such a huge threat for this Illini defense. And that was a big question going into the postseason. Illinois, #1 offense in the country, but can they string together enough stops to win games? What did you learn about Illinois' defense from this matchup?
Well, I thought they were really tough. They did a great job on Iowa State's, especially their guards in the first half. Really limited them. Iowa State only 26 points that first half. Besides Curtis Jones, he had 26 on the night. Illinois did a great job throughout. Had a little bit of issue off ball screens with Gilbert and Lipsey getting to the basket, but besides that, did a great job of keeping Iowa State out of the paint, contesting threes. And if you look at Illinois' team, they have the personnel to be very good defensively. I thought for 40 minutes, they were pretty darn solid on that end. You know, tomorrow night against UConn, they're going to need to be great on both sides of the ball. Good effort last night, big win, battled through against a tough Iowa State team. But they're going to have to step it up a notch to contend with and beat a UConn team as well.
Yeah, let's lead right into that upcoming matchup for Illinois. They're looking to make the Final Four for the first time since 2005. Once again, that's when Illinois made that run to the national title game, falling just short against UNC. They were outstanding in that Elite Eight matchup against Arizona, battling back. This time around, though, it looks like Illinois is running into a buzzsaw with UConn. They just beat San Diego State by 30. 9 straight March Madness wins for UConn, the longest streak in the country. I mean, what do you do? What's the game plan against this Huskies team?
Well, they're very good. Okay, they actually leapfrog. Now they're #1 offense in the country. Illinois is the #2 offense. They have a top 10 defense as well. So across the board, this Huskies team is very, very good. When you look at their lineup, their 3 guards are all 6'4", 6'5", 6'6". Newton and Spencer, both experienced fifth-year guys. Now Stephen Castle is a freshman coming in. Their big guy, though, Donovan Clingan, I think he's going to be a tough one for Illinois. 7'2", really protects the rim, great length, a quick, not quite the offensive player that Zach Edey is, but defensively a bit quicker, maybe longer, a little bit more athletic. So he is really tough on that end of the floor. And just the offense they run, they share the ball well, they shoot it well, everybody's a threat. I was so impressed. I've been so impressed watching this UConn team. Now I'll say, they are not unbeatable. Okay, I think we've seen better teams lose in the NCAA tournament than them. They haven't lost all this calendar year except for one game against Creighton where they shot the lights out. But this is a beatable team. I think Illinois has the pieces, the uniqueness and their talent, their explosiveness that they could definitely give them a run and get a win here tomorrow night.
And Illinois right now, they're getting contributions up and down the lineup. That's been another big key. Luke Goody had a couple of big baskets off the bench, for example. But one thing we haven't addressed from last night's matchup is the free throw issue, because moving forward against a very talented UConn team, Illinois is going to have to play a complete game. You can't shoot 51% from the charity stripe. And at this time of the year, so many games come down to free throws. How did they clean that up? They're usually a good free throw shooting team, which makes it just such an anomaly.
They are. And Terrence Shannon, he was 5 for 10 last night. He's a guy that shoots at a really high rate.
More than 80%.
You would expect him to get to the free throw line more. So that's not too much of a concern for me, but they do need to get there. You think, can Shannon maybe put some pressure on the rim, get Clingan into foul trouble? That would change how the Huskies play defense, but they're going to have to convert if they get there. They're going to have to knock down threes in this matchup. They're going to need everybody to play at their top level. But I do think the personnel that Illinois has, when you think of Damask and even going up against these good guards on UConn, I think he has an advantage with his low post game. Sure, you can have Clingan lurking there, but that's where I look at a guy like Luke Goody. You know, he played 28 minutes last night. I would expect him to maybe play more than a Ty Rodgers. So can you force Clingan out of the paint? If he's got to guard Coleman Hawkins, now he's got to be out of the paint, or even Dane Danger will occupy him because he's such a threat offensively. If Illinois, again, playing through Damask in the post, he'll be a problem for UConn's guards, no matter how good they are. And then if they can get out into transition, if Terrence Shannon, as good as those guys are, I think he's still the best player on the court. So when you have those type of guys you can play through, then if you have other guys, maybe it's Goody, Quincy Gary, some guys knocking down some threes, Illinois has more than a puncher's chance in this game. Now, on the other end of the floor, too. Okay, yes, I think Illinois can score against them. They're going to have to get stops. They haven't been great at that this year. They've been better in the NCAA tournament. Were good last night. UConn's a different beast on the offensive end. So all 5 are going to have to be locked in, disciplined, force tough shots, clean up the rebounds, and then see if they can get some transition buckets.
You'd think the Illinois booty ball offense would work a little bit, as you pointed out. Marcus Domas, so good when he gets into those mismatch situations, so good at posting up that he would be able to bully maybe some of those smaller UConn guards and possibly, be able to come up with some points that way. But that's going to be a very tough matchup. Illinois moving on to the Elite Eight, but they do face the top overall seed in UConn coming up on Saturday. 1 down, 1 to go, though, for the Big Ten. Could another Big Ten team move on to the Elite Eight? Next, Trent explains how Purdue can take down Gonzaga for the 2nd time this season, but it's going to be tough. Here's today's big stat presented by Gatorade. Purdue is making their 5th Sweet 16 appearance in the last 7 tournaments, looking for their first Elite Eight berth since 2019. The team standing in their way? Gonzaga. The Boilers and Zags met in the Maui Invitational back in late November, with Purdue taking the W by 10 points. However, this is a Gonzaga team that is much improved, much different than that point in time. They also are playing very well in their NCAA tournament games. But I want to start by looking back at Purdue's performance so far, because they were dominant in their first and second round matchups. 67 points, the margin of victory across those 2 games. 106 points, the most for a Big Ten team in an NCAA tournament game since 1999, when they took down 8th-seeded Utah State. And it's not a bad Utah State team either. Purdue is just clicking on all cylinders. They're out rebounding their opponents 97-49 in the NCAA tournament. I mean, first, what were some of your biggest takeaways from Purdue's first 2 rounds?
Well, this is a really good team that's just locked in. I mean, they've been preparing for this moment for over a year now. And you have the best player that they're playing through. Zach Edey's playing at such a high level. There's no more dominant force in college basketball than Zach Edey, so they're playing through him. They got shooters around him that have shot the ball well all year. They're confident. Guys know their roles. Braden Smith, as that conductor, that orchestrator, is running things well. So, look, Purdue's really good, and they've been preparing for this moment. Here they are. They have a very professional, intentional approach. I love where their mind's at. I think this game against Gonzaga, though, is going to be tougher. For what it's worth, I got Purdue winning this one, but I think a lot of people have been down on Gonzaga throughout this year and think, oh, are they almost a fluke? No, this is a good team. They're talented across the board. I don't think it'll be an easy one for Purdue.
Let's go back to the last time Purdue played Gonzaga in that Maui Invitational. It was a 10-point win for the Boilermakers. Zach Edey was dominant, 25 points, 14 rebounds, but the Zags didn't shoot the 3 ball well in that game, and that's something some of the players and head coach Mark Few have said they need to do this time around against Purdue. They've been shooting it better from outside. How does Purdue need to defend the perimeter in this matchup to prevent that from happening?
The 3-point line will be so crucial in this game. That first matchup, I think they were 6 for 32. Gonzaga was there 0 for 13 in the second half, so they had a lead at halftime, but couldn't make a shot in the second half. Look, it's tough to finish in the paint against Purdue. You're going to have to knock down shots. Gonzaga, their 2 guards, Nolan Hickman, Ryan Nembhard. They'll run a lot of ball screens for those guys. Nembhard can both score and facilitate. Hickman's more of a scorer, but both of them can come out and knock down threes off those ball screens. Purdue's going to have to do a really good job on those 2 guys. But then across the board, besides Ike, pretty much everybody is a threat from the perimeter. So now Gonzaga, which was different back in Maui early in the season, is they start 3 bigs. Ike, Anton Watson, Ben Gregg. All those guys 6'8", 6'9", 6'10". They bring Braden Huff off the bench, 6'10". He shoots the 3 as well. So this is a big team. They don't have one Zach Edey or anybody close to that, but Ike's a really physical, aggressive player. I think they'll use their length, and Purdue is going to have to shoot with confidence like they've done, even if this game is tight. Gillis, Lawyer, Jones, you're going to have to shoot the ball with confidence and also do a great job of taking away the 3 from Gonzaga.
To your point about forwards, Watson and Gregg being decent, at least from the perimeter, they can pick and pop in some of those screening situations. How does Purdue need to defend those ball screens that Gonzaga is going to run all game long?
Well, it starts with your pressure and staying with the guards and Nembhard and Hickman. If those guys are coming off free, well, one, you got an issue with those guys knocking down shots. Then you got an issue, are you switching? Are you hedging and getting back? So the guards, whether you're Braden Smith, Foster Lawyer, Lance Jones, they're going to have to do a great job at that point of attack. And then from there, I think Gillis, Kaufman, Wren, they might switch a little bit. You know, Edey's going to be back in the paint and that drop coverage, but it starts with the guards. And that's, as the bigs for Gonzaga are talented, they're skilled, but for me, it's the guards that are a little bit more concerning because both those guys, Nembhard, he had a 30-point game last year in the NCAA tournament against Baylor. Really gifted players, and I think the point guard matchup in particular, Kylan, will be really, really intriguing. I think Smith and Nembhard are are similar players. Nembhard's really quick, and against Kansas, he had 12 assists. So if he's getting in the paint, if he's knocking down threes, that opens up the game for Gonzaga. So Purdue's got to be great on that end of the floor, because I think offensively, Purdue's not going to have any issue playing through Edey, attacking the offensive glass, and knocking down the threes like they have.
I mean, the bread and butter for Purdue in this matchup should be going to Edey, right? I mean, look at his play in the NCAA tournament, averaging 27 points, 17.5 rebounds. And yes, Ike is more of that traditional post. He's strong, but he's still not a match for Zach Edey, right? I mean, that's got to be where they look to first.
Edey had 25 and 14 in that first matchup. And look, that's like his averages. That's what he does night in, night out. And
Crazy.
Purdue has a lot of options, but they don't veer from who they are. They know Zach Edey every night has the advantage. That's who they got to play through. He plays a lot of minutes. He's in great shape. He knows how to get positioning without fouling. I love the actions they run to get him in the low post. He's the screener. So they're not always screening from him. He's the ball screener. He's rolling, diving to the basket. He's setting a down screen, and he's pinning. And they do a great job, their schemes, of running shooters around him. Braden Smith coming off that ball screen, getting Edey with some momentum, going to the basket, and he's so difficult to deal with. So Purdue, they're going to play through him like they have all year. And despite Gonzaga's size, I think they'll try to dig down on him as much as possible. He's just so tough to handle. And it'll be interesting what Gonzaga tries to do throughout the course of the game. How they start playing him, I would guess they would maybe play him a little bit more straight up, maybe try to scrape down a bit. We'll see if they go to double teams more. And Edey, the team, they're going to have to be ready to adapt depending on how they guard him.
The other thing about Zach Edey, besides all the physical attributes, there's a look in his eyes right now. Every time he's talked to the media surrounding one of these NCAA tournament games, like he's not messing around. This is all business. This Purdue team is here to win a national championship. And I think right now, with the way they're playing, they believe they can do it, and they have that confidence.
I think that's the most important thing, their mental approach. And Edey definitely has that game face. It seems like 24/7. But whether it's Braden Smith or Lawyer or Coach Painter, we've seen him get a little bit chippy with the press. I don't mind it at all. I think they had a chip on their shoulder coming off of last season. And it's carried throughout the year. They're ready for this moment, so it's going to be fun to watch them here in the Sweet 16 on this stage.
Well, that moment is already coming up tonight, 6:39 Central Time, 7:39 Eastern. Top-seeded Purdue taking on 5th-seeded Gonzaga with a chance to go to the Elite Eight on the line. Over on the women's side, Big Ten stars Caitlin Clark and Mackenzie Holmes looking to lead their programs to elite territory. Christy Winter-Scott joins me next to break down the task ahead for Iowa and Indiana. Now, taking a look at 2 elite Big Ten teams and 2 elite offenses in Iowa and Indiana, among the top in the country in highest points per play average. Also, Iowa leads the country in points per game, averaging more than 90. Indiana, a top 3 three-point shooting team. So these are 2 teams that have been able to light it up in a variety of ways, and they both are looking to advance to the Elite Eight with a couple of matchups coming up this weekend. Welcome back into Big Ten today, and I'm so excited now to be joined by one of my partners on the call for a number of games this season, Christy Winter-Scott, here to talk about these upcoming Sweet 16 matchups. Christy, now that you're on camera, you're going to be caught red-handed if you do any of the arm grabbing that I got from you all season long.
I have long arms, so I can still stick you, Kylie.
She's got some long arms, so watch out for that. But let's start out by talking about top-seeded Iowa taking on 5th-seeded Colorado on Saturday afternoon. The Buffaloes, a really good team. Yes. They have 5 top 15 wins in their resume from the regular season. They're playing really well, just beat Kansas State 63-50 in the second round. And they're a balanced team, unlike the West Virginia team that Iowa just faced. What are you watching for in that matchup?
I'm watching to see if the offense can fire for Iowa. I think they're really going to need to be on their game. And I think when you're looking at the well-balanced team, everyone thinks Caitlin Clark, that's just her. But there are so many other offensive threats. You have Hannah Stokey on the interior, who's been playing fantastically efficient on the inside. But they move the ball so well, Kylan. They have to do that against a team like Colorado. They are a staunch defensive group. They play as a unit. They rotate well. But when you are talking about an Iowa team, they want to push pace. So how do you push pace? You get the rebounds, you get live ball stops, and you push tempo the other way.
It's interesting you point out the rebounds because that's something several of the Iowa players pointed out was key in their win over West Virginia in their second round matchup to be able to finish them off down the stretch. West Virginia, also a very good defensive team. They were able to hold Iowa nearly 30 points below their season average, but the Hawkeyes found a way to win. They have to do a little bit more offensively, though, here moving forward. Only 4 players scored, only 1 field goal in the fourth quarter. What needs to change for the Hawkeyes to get some of that ball movement back?
Well, ball movement took them straight to the free throw line. And it was a 30-5 advantage on free throws. So if they can stay aggressive, get downhill, get a piece of the paint, but also get a piece of the body and get to the line and capitalize there, that's where they can gain some traction, and that's where they can get that production. But on the offensive side in the quarter court, they're going to have to play with some resilience, and they're going to have to be poised. And when you're talking about a team that likes to get up and down the floor, sometimes controlling the tempo is not just fast break. It's controlling the tempo in the quarter court. How quickly can you get into actions? How quickly can you attack the paint? How quickly can you get the ball inside, kick it back out, and get the extra pass? Put the defense in rotation. Make it difficult for them to make decisions on where to cover and how to cover, and attack the closeouts hard.
To your point, though, about Iowa getting all of that started, they like to get forward fast. They have to play good defense, and that's something that has been a little bit of a question mark. They've had a high-powered offense all season long. Can they string together stops? And looking at this Buffalo lineup, they're really pretty well balanced in terms of their attack. They've got Jalen Sherrod, their point guard, who's averaging nearly 13 points per game. They've got great three-point shooters, Frida Foreman, a player who's shooting more than 40% from beyond the arc. Maddie Nolan, another big addition as well. They've got a strong interior presence. How did they defend this wealth of scoring options that Colorado has?
Well, when you're looking at what Colorado did at the beginning of the season, they beat LSU and knocked LSU down a couple pegs in the top 10. But when you're talking about this Colorado team, they have well-balanced offense, and they attack from the inside to the outside. They move the basketball well. So in that regard, they're very similar to what Iowa does on the offensive end. So they have to kind of mirror what they do to themselves in practice, you know? They're going to have to guard every single spot on the floor, but they're going to have to do it with great on-ball defense, and they have to be ready, right? They can't be late on rotations. They have to be there to contest in the shot pockets.
It's crazy we've gotten this far into the segment and have not yet talked about Caitlin Clark coming off another 30-point performance. I know you pointed out role players need to step up as well, but still she's their leader. She's the head of the snake, just set the record for single season scoring.
Yes, how about that?
What are you looking for from her in this game?
Well, you know what? Caitlin Clark has seen every single defensive scheme imaginable. So she's ready. She's primed. In her sophomore season, they were upset by Creighton, and she was talking about how playing at home, there's a lot of pressure there. Clearly, the last 2 seasons, they've advanced out of that situation. But when you're talking about a player like Caitlin Clark, she's already declared for the WNBA draft on April 15th. So when you're looking at what she wants to do for this team, she understands the pressure. And Lisa Bluter, she said heavy is the head that wears the crown, and she wants that. And that's what I love about Caitlin Clark. The challenge is in front of her. She knows what to do. And now it's just up to the team to get the job done. But you're talking about an Iowa team that has Kate Martin, and she is the glue player, and you don't mention her name as much as you should. I know Caitlin Clark mentions her name a lot because of what she does on the court, but when you're talking about Kate Martin, she is that glue kid who's going to get to the glass. She's going to guard hard. She's going to be on the ground. She's going to average 10 drop downs on the floor. Like, she's going to be hustling for the 50-50 opportunities for the Iowa Hawkeyes. So I just love the grit and the grind that's gotten them here. It hasn't been pretty, and I know Lisa Bluter has said as much. Caitlin Clark also has said as much. You know, we haven't played our best basketball, but we've advanced, and we've done it as a unit, and we've done it with defense, right? You saw Gabby with that big block. I mean, she's diminutive, right? But it's the heart and the hustle that comes through, and selling out 30 of your 32 games, I mean, that kind of energy and effort and focus is respected.
To your point about the grit, a perfect example of Iowa's resilience is the way they responded after Molly Davis went down in the regular season finale. Talk about a glue player. She's another one who can hit the outside shot and just has been so important to this team. They come back, they respond, they win the Big Ten tournament, and now they're ready to go on an NCAA tournament run. You saw players around Caitlin Clark step up. The team really rallied around her. Now, you've spent a lot of time around this Iowa team getting to call some of their games. What's the mentality and just kind of the feeling in the locker room for the Hawkeyes?
They're confident. they're confident, and most importantly, they're ready. They've put in the work, and that's what breeds the confidence, right? If you're not prepared, then you're going to be nervous. But when you're prepared, yes, you're going to have that flow of energy, but you're not going to be afraid. And I think that's the difference. I was not afraid. They've been here before. They went to the championship game last year. They upset South Carolina in the Final Four. So this is a team that brings back 3 of their 5 starters from last year that have that kind of experience, but also players on the bench, right? They saw what it took, and maybe they didn't get the gaudy minutes last year, but they experienced what it took to get them to the Final Four and the Final 2. Okay, so you have players who understand the assignment. They were that close, so they're super hungry. And sometimes, tactically speaking, you can't draw up a play for what it takes, right? You have the experience in your back pocket, pull it out, use it, and then have that advantage when you get on the floor, because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to desire. It's going to come down to want to, and how to. They know how to. Now it's the want to, and then execute the want to that gets them over the top.
All right, let's switch over now to the Friday night matchup between 4th-seeded Indiana and top-seeded South Carolina. That's quite the draw. But first, let's go back to some positives from the Hoosiers' last matchup against Oklahoma. 2 high-powered offenses. They end up being able to close out strong in that 4th quarter. In fact, Mackenzie Holmes and Sarah Scalia outscored the entire Sooners team in the 4th quarter in order to help this team close out. What did you take away from that game?
2 words. Mackenzie Holmes.
Okay.
Listen, okay.
There we go.
When you're
Bookmark
talking,
it.
listen, she's got some mitts, okay? All you have to do is throw it in her direction. She's shooting 65% from the floor. This will be her 2nd consecutive season where she's scored over 20 points a game, All-American. And she got injured a couple of weeks ago. I was a little concerned about what the postseason run would look like without Mackenzie Holmes on the floor, but there she is, okay? And she has been doing the work. But the difference this year, Sarah Scalia, she wasn't hitting that shot from the outside as consistently as she is now. And she had a little skid at the beginning of the year, but got her shot right. But when you're talking about the balance around Mackenzie Holmes, you have Yarden Garzon out there letting it fly, 6'2", shooting a 3, but she can also attack you off the bounce when you try to close her out. But I love the balance that Indiana presents on the offensive end around Mackenzie Holmes. I think that she is well suited, and again, another player who's hungry for it, another player who was injured the last couple of postseasons, wants to get her team over the hump as well.
Holmes set a new IU NCAA tournament record with her game-high 29 points against Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So luckily, looked like that knee was not any type of a factor for her recent play. Yeah, but as you pointed out, last couple of seasons has been hampered by a couple of injuries. Looking at the South Carolina team, undefeated coming into this matchup, they are a team that's very well balanced in scoring, 2nd in the nation in points per game, but do not have a single player that's in the top 250 in scoring. They can get you in so many different ways. What does this Indiana team need to do?
Well, they've got to take care of the basketball. And right now, Indiana, they only allow their opponents to steal the ball from them 5.5 times. So that's good. That's in the top 14th percentile in the country. So take care of the basketball against this team like South Carolina. They want to get it and go. They have Cardoza inside. She is amazing in terms of her size and ability, and I love that matchup between Mackenzie Holmes and Cardozo. But when you have a team that's coached by Dawn Staley, they're coming in undefeated once again at this juncture of the postseason. So you've got to do your work. They play great defensively. Indiana is tops in the country, shooting over 50% as a team. That's number 1, okay? But also on the flip side, South Carolina, number 1 in defensive field goal percentage, only allowing 32% for opponents. So that's going to be the conundrum. Like, who is going to get this game done? Will over skill, or just play with a lot of will and just impose that will on the court? So we'll see. But South Carolina, that's a tough out right there. And Fuwali is a beast. Okay, she's shooting almost 60% from 3 in her last 3 games. The freshman, you think of all the wiggles that she does, a little shifty and the in and out. Not that I dribbled like that, but that's just what it looks like to me. I can't do any of that. Can't do any of that. But she has been incredible as a freshman this year for South Carolina. But she can stick it too, and that's the difference between South Carolina this year and last year. Last year they shot just over 30% from 3. This year, close to 40% from 3. So both teams with complementary shooters outside of really great players on the inside with Cardoza and Mackenzie Holmes.
Man, it's going to be a tough one for Indiana, once again taking on the top overall seed on this Friday. Let's go to the ice up next. Minnesota one win away from the Frozen Four, while three Big Ten teams play on this Friday in the NCAA Ice Hockey Championship. Paul Caponigri joins us next with the bracket breakdown. And everything else related to the NCAA Men's Ice Hockey Championship. We now welcome in Paul Caponigri, our own Big Ten Network analyst, who also was on the call for that Minnesota matchup last night. Paul, great to see you. And first of all, how is Sioux Falls treating you? You're doing some mall walking, you mentioned?
You know, hey, it was a little cold, so the only way to get some exercise inside, I'm staying right by a mall, so yes, I was a mall walker. You got me on that one.
Hey, there's no shame in being a mall walker. It's very cold. You got to get your exercise in. All right, well, let's start out with the matchup last night that you were on the call for. Minnesota taking down Omaha 3-2. They're able to battle back. They were able to capitalize on a couple of turnovers they forced. But to you, from your vantage point, what was the key to them overcoming a couple of deficits?
Yeah, I mean, they're older veteran players. Their leaders stepped up. Justin Close was outstanding in goal all night long. Especially at the end when Omaha was coming with a barrage down 3-2. But the dynamic duo last night, they've been fantastic for the Gophers their whole career. But Jackson Nelson and Bryce Brodzinski on those two goals, I mean, you could feel it in the building. The Gopher fans were getting worried, down 2-1. It was getting late in the game. And Bryce Brodzinski created that play on the 2-2 goal. And then they got a little lucky on a turnover for the game-winning goal, but those guys took advantage of it, and that's what great players do. But those three guys specifically really stepped up for the Gophers when they needed it the most last night.
Minnesota able to withstand a couple of those Omaha runs, just did such a good job. And you mentioned that veteran leadership, so important when it comes to being able to have that resilience. Now, looking ahead, Minnesota faces Boston University on Saturday with a trip to the Frozen Four on the line. What are you looking for in that match?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's two highly skilled teams. I think it's going to be a better matchup, honestly, for Minnesota in terms of the style of play. But Boston University is, they've been in the top three all season long. They are one of the most skilled teams in the country. This is a rematch of the Frozen Four semifinal last year where the Gophers were able to win that game. And they were the more skilled and better team this year. I think it's the roles are a little reversed. Can the Gophers win? Absolutely. But BU has got a dynamic freshman who's going to be the #1 draft pick in the NHL next year. His name is Macklin Celebrini. He's 17 years old. Helen, shouldn't even be in college yet, but he has 32 goals in 37 games, I believe. Either way. He's a dynamic forward, along with him and Lane Hudson are the two key components for them. But I like, in terms of game style, I like this matchup more for Minnesota. It's just they're going to have another big game from that trio I talked about. And Jimmy Snuggerud is the guy I'm looking for to step up for the Gophers. 21 goals on a season, but he is right on the cusp of, if he can get one early, his confidence will soar. And I think he's a key component for them to advance to the Frozen Four.
That should be an exciting matchup. Once again, Minnesota facing Boston University on Saturday. Now, three more Big Tens will be playing on this Friday. Let's start with top-seeded Michigan State taking on fourth-seeded Western Michigan. Spartans are having an excellent season. Head coach Adam Nightingale has done such an incredible job in just his second season, really turning this program around. They're Big Ten champions. But they have not played in the NCAA tournament in more than a decade, and that experience does pay dividends when it comes to these close contests. How much do you expect that to impact this team?
Yeah, I mean, you saw it last night, right? Like I talked about with Minnesota, their experience kind of helped them at the end. Their experienced players were big for them. Michigan State is kind of just they're doing a lot of things this year that they haven't experienced, but they keep having success at them, and I think that's a big. Credit goes to Adam Nightingale and the culture in such a short time that he's built. Now, having said that, Western Michigan was in the NCAA tournament last year. Michigan State wasn't, so they have a little more experience. So that part, you favor Western Michigan a little, but the talent-wise and culture-wise, Michigan State can compete with anybody. It's going to be a tough one, but why wouldn't I pick them now? They've kind of answered to every test they've had this year already. So I'm expecting the same from them, but it's going to be a tough game. Very two evenly matched teams. It's a 1 versus 4, but in the NCAA tournament for hockey, there's only 16 teams that make it. So you're looking at a two teams that were right in the middle of the rankings all season. So it's going to be a tight game, but I like what Michigan State brings to the table.
To continue the point about experience, MSU freshman goaltender Trey Augustine has been fantastic all season long. 4th in the nation right now in saves, also was the Big Ten tournament's most outstanding player. But once again, you're looking at a player who's still new to this situation. What do you need to see from him between the pipes?
You know what's funny about him? He's the freshman, but he's probably the guy I'm least worried about on their team because of I think he's at his international experience in the past as a 16, 17, 18-year-old. He's played in a lot of big games. I've mentioned this 100 times this year. He won the gold medal with the World Junior team in Sweden against Sweden this year in front of 11,000 fans against them. And he was the backbone for Team USA. So I don't think he's going to play in a game with more importance than that, maybe equal to it, but clearly he was up to the challenge there. So I don't see him I think he's going to be the key to another key to Michigan State success and maybe the leader in driving that confidence.
That's where you see that international experience makes such a huge difference for these players competing at the NCAA level. Now on to another big matchup, Wisconsin taking on the defending national champion Quinnipiac. And the Badgers are a team very familiar with the NCAA tournament, but they're coming back off of a couple of weeks break after being eliminated early on in the Big Ten tournament. They were upset by Ohio State. How much do you think that will affect how the Badgers come out in this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge unknown, obviously. I think, but you can look back on another team in the Big Ten just last year. Penn State had this same exact scenario where they got ousted in the first round and had about 3 weeks off. And they came in at the NCAA tournament and won 8-1 in the regional semifinal and then lost to Michigan in overtime. They're 1 goal away from reaching the Frozen Four. And I know Coach Mike Hastings spoke with Keith Fisher, who's an assistant at Penn State, kind of getting maybe a little advice, on what Penn State did to do in that 3-week time, because it's an unprecedented thing that most coaches never have to deal with. So I think they're going to have a ton of energy. Obviously, they've had plenty of rest time, but it'll be interesting to see how they come out with that energy comboed with the rust of not playing a game in 3 weeks.
It also needs to be pointed out these two teams bring in 2 of the best scoring defenses in the country, only averaging about 2 goals they're giving up per game. What's going to be the difference in this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a matter of when you have teams like that is keeping it simple, not overplaying the puck. Don't turn it over. If they're not giving up much, you don't want to give up much, right? So limit the turnovers. I love Kyle McClellan, and that has been the best goaltender in the country all year. You look at the stats, 7 shutouts, a .931 save percentage. Those are ridiculous numbers. Trust in your goaltender, and then make it simple on offense. Put pucks at the net. The cliches of all hockey, put pucks on net, get guys in front of their goaltender, make life difficult. But it's going to probably be a game on an ugly goal, just getting the lucky bounce. But if Wisconsin can find a way to get this game, man, the sky's the limit for them because their confidence will grow and they're going to be a fresh team. They haven't played in 3 weeks, but once you get a game under your belt, if you can advance, look out for the Badgers.
It has to be a little bit of a confidence boost as well, having the Big Ten goaltender of the year and Kyle McClellan, as you pointed out, back between the pipes. That should be a really fun matchup. Last matchup of this Friday, coming up at 7:30 p.m. Central, 8:30 Eastern, is going to be 3rd-seeded Michigan taking on 2nd-seeded North Dakota. This Wolverines team just lost a heartbreaker in the Big Ten Tournament Championship to Michigan State. Do you expect any of that to carry over into this NCAA tournament, or was there anything they could take away from that?
I mean, I expect the carryover is they played great. They lost in overtime on the road at a crazy Munn Ice Arena with Michigan State fans on a goal that was, a wrist shot from the point. So they weren't getting outplayed. It was a great play for Michigan State to get the goal. But Michigan State they both played good games. But Michigan, we're talking about, played a really good game, and they had been playing great hockey leading up into that game. So aside from, yes, the down of not winning the Big Ten championship, aside from that, they got to be coming in as a very confident bunch right now, the way they played all the way through March, because they were fighting for their NCAA at-large, life. Early March, it was like they're right on the bubble. And then they won 4 to 6 games in a row. They beat Notre Dame 2 weekends, 4 times. That really elevated them. Then they beat Minnesota in Mariucci on the road. So they're playing really good hockey. So I think, yes, you're unhappy with losing that game, but their confidence right now has to be really high.
So a lot of confidence, plus the top 3 scoring offense in the country for Michigan bodes well as they have a Friday night matchup against second-seeded North Dakota up ahead. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the time. Go get back to your mall walking. Get in a couple more laps before you get back on some of the broadcasts.
You got it. Thanks, Kylan.
Great to have Paul on the show. Next, Caitlin Clark named to the Team USA training camp roster and reportedly receives a separate $5 million offer. Christy is back to explain the big week for the Iowa Star. The Nittany Lions are dancing into the WBIT semifinals. Penn State defeated Mississippi State 92-87 Thursday night at the Bryce Jordan Center. Guard Ashley Owusu led the way with 24 points, while McKenna Marisa poured in 22. The win marks the first time Penn State reached the semifinals of a postseason tournament since their 2000 run to the NCAA Tournament Final Four. And this Penn State team under head coach Carolyn Keeger has really turned around in the last 5 seasons. You look at this team and they were right on the bubble of making the NCAA tournament for the first time in a decade. You have to think, had point guard Tay Valladay not gotten injured in February, what could have been? But when you've watched the development of this Penn State team, what stands out?
All the grit and the toughness. They carry out what Carolyn Keeger preaches, and it's all the time effort. And that's what you see from this team. Ashley Owusu didn't play for several of the first games of the season. And then with Valladay going down in February, just a little bit disjointed with their chemistry.
Yeah, well, looking ahead, what do you think is going to be key for them to possibly win the WBIT, which would just be a huge confidence boost for this program, don't you think?
Absolutely. I think share the sugar, right? Pass the ball, get everybody involved. Without Valladay in there, you're going to have to crash the boards a little harder because she was staunch on the glass. But I just think that they just have to keep that motor running. And I know that Carolyn Keeger is going to keep the gas pedal down.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I love getting to talk to her out on the call.
Yep, chills right now.
Yep, I'm going to say she knows her stuff. Now, Penn State is not the only Big Ten team that's going to be playing in the WBIT semifinals. Illinois also advanced after taking down Tulsa, a big win for that program. But Illinois a little bit in a different situation than the Nittany Lions because they came into the season with really high expectations. The Illini were ranked top 25. They returned all of their starters from a season ago in a team that really surprised a lot of folks. What happened down the stretch of the season for Illinois?
They got shots to fall. I think that's the biggest difference. I mean, if you're looking at what Illinois did last year, got up to as high as 14th in the country. They did that with shooting the basketball really well, especially from 3. They returned over 80% of their offense to the floor. So when they were coming out of the gates a little slow, I had a couple of their games, and Shauna Green, the head coach, she said, hey, we just have to knock in our shots. It wasn't that it changed, that we were taking our same great shots, but they were being defended differently as well because people knew what they were going to come with on the offensive end for Illinois. But I think they just have to move the basketball as well, but they also have to make their shots. But I think they started attacking the basket and getting to the rim, and I think that changed things for them because then they could spray out. They committed the defense to the basketball, but I think if they stay in attack mode, I think they'll be great in the postseason here.
Something Coach Green said early on in the season when Illinois was struggling is she felt like they were forcing things a little bit, maybe forcing some tougher outside shots because they're pressing, because they wanted to do well and they had those expectations. But hey, it would still be fun to see a Big Ten versus Big Ten WBIT finals matchup, so it could very well happen.
Big
Illinois
Ten tournament.
moving on to the semifinals, very exciting. All right, well, some other big news in the women's basketball world. A big surprise from USA Basketball. Caitlin Clark was named to the 14-player training camp roster ahead of the 2024 Summer Olympics. Several stars who helped the United States win gold at the 2022 Women's World Cup were included, like Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, just a number of the greats whose names you're used to seeing. Clark, the only non-WNBA player on the list. Are you surprised to see this, Christy?
Not at all, right? You have to consider her, Caitlin Clark, and not just for her scoring ability. I mean, she averages almost 9 assists a game. So let's just not forget that she's an initiator. She's the straw that stirs the drink for her team at Iowa and can do the same for our USA Basketball.
All right, well, besides USA Basketball, Caitlin Clark also had a big week because she reportedly received a huge offer from hip-hop artist Ice Cube, has come out and confirmed that he offered Caitlin Clark $5 million to take part in his 3-on-3 league. Yes, you heard that right. $5 million. Now, she already has announced she planned to enter the WNBA draft after the season. But hey, with an offer like that, now he has said that she should be able to play in both leagues. But still, what do you think that does for the game? And what do you take from that? Should she do it?
Oh, absolutely, she should do it. And Ice Cube called me because Big Three, there's no age limit, right?
Here we go,
Anyway, get it together.
They're paying broadcasters too.
I mean, $5 million. Let's go with that. But no, I think it's great for the game. It's not a gimmick, okay? If anything, it draws more attention to women's basketball. And Ice Cube, big time offer there. Caitlin Clark, yes, take that offer and do it all. Do it all for the game. Galvanize it. Continue push.
Ice Cube, call us next. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.